15 freaky reports of Sasquatch abductions. For years, paranormal researchers and the world at large have been captivated by eerie tales of a large ape-like entity that appears in remote areas of the world. Variously called Sasquatch, Yeti, or the Abominable Snowman, a giant creature, sometimes seen stalking across the northern mountains of the Himalayas or the forests of the Pacific Northwest, among other areas of the world, has proven an enigma to many. The problem with the Yeti debate, however, is that the creature leaves no evidence of living on the continents it is seen on. Although footprints are sometimes discovered in areas where the being is sighted, there's also an equally puzzling amount of evidence to support Sasquatch's ongoing habitation in regions of the world. If some primate lives in these areas of the world, where, for example, are the remains of his ancestors? Scientists often doubt the claims of Sasquatch because no bone record has ever been found of the mysterious creature. For others, this mystery only intensifies the exotic nature of Bigfoot's secrecy and existence. While some shamans of the world report that Sasquatch is a magical and sacred entity from another world, a lesser-known fact is that some researchers also report a darker side of the Sasquatch sightings. This belief is based on the series of reports of bizarre and abnormal kidnappings by Sasquatch, some of which date back to the 1800s. Here's a look at some of those scary and sometimes unpleasant encounters with the legendary creature called Bigfoot. 15. A captured Indian woman. One of the oldest accounts we have of Sasquatch stems from an account dating back to 1871 near Harrison Lake at Port Douglas. The story narrates how a young American Indian woman, then 17 years old, was taken from her tribal homestead near the lake and kept in a secret hiding place by the Sasquatch for a year. The girl later reported that she was returned to her home by the creature due to the fact that she had aggravated it so much with her pleadings and demands. While the story is believed to have been embellished in a lot of ways, some accounts of the tale say that the girl had a half-breed child by her Sasquatch kidnapper. The woman held true to her story about Sasquatch until her death in 1940. 14. The Case of Muckalot Harry. In 1928, not long after the Osterman incident, Muckalot Harry, a trapper on the west coast of Vancouver Island, also similarly reported being kidnapped by a Sasquatch and taken 3 miles up the Concuma River. Like Osterman, Muckalot was dreaming peacefully at the time of the kidnapping when he was awoken by the sound of something jostling and lifting him off the ground. Terrified, Muckalot said that he tried desperately but unsuccessfully to free himself from the powerful creature that was easily carrying him upstream. Later, the trapper found himself in a camp of 20 or so Squatches, with bones littered all over the ground around him, at which point he panicked and ran back downstream to his canoe. At 3 a.m. the following morning, a Catholic missionary found the frightened trapper, who had paddled 45 miles non-stop to a local village where the native indigenous Nukta tribes lived. According to later reports, Muckalot never returned to the woods in Vancouver ever again. 13. The Mating Pit Story. Thus far the stories about Sasquatch have not included any descriptions of sexual molestation and rape by the legendary creature. But there remains an actual strange body of evidence in existence about Bigfoot engaging in sexual acts that are not at the choice of those it encounters. One such story was told by John Lewis, whose grandfather worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad during the early 1900s. According to Lewis, his grandmother had told him that, while working in the railroad business, her husband was building a rail track with a crew of men. During this time, one of the men in the rail crew was lost during a regular day's course at work. When the crewman was found, he appeared to be insane and hysterical. Shortly after telling the story, the man died. He told of a female ape that had kept him in a pit somewhere nearby. The ape had forced him to have sexual contacts with him, the man had said. Well, the strange tale of Albert Osterman. In 1924, Albert Osterman, a lumberjack and woodsman, went on a vacation in British Columbia, where he alleged later to police and the public that he had a bizarre encounter with a tribe of Sasquatch that lasted 6 days. Osterman claimed at the time that he was of scientific mind and that he did not believe the strange and eerie tales about the large creature in the high northern Canadian woodlands that preceded his encounter. That view was shattered after he said a Sasquatch carried him off in a sleeping bag while he was sleeping in the woods. The Squatch carried him for 3 hours, Osterman reported, after which he found himself in an encampment of the creatures, comprised of 3 adults and a child. One of the adults was 8 feet tall, the woodsman reported. Osterman went public with his story in 1957 after Sasquatch sightings became more commonplace. 11. The Mountain Monster. I'm just a country girl, but I know what I saw. That's what the mother of a young boy told the media and police back in 1976 when she saw a Sasquatch try to abduct her son. The Squatch was described as 8 feet tall, and it was said by witnesses to scream at times when others were in the area. Sightings of the hairy animal in the same area around Tennessee had been already surfacing for 3 years prior to this event. But when the allegation arose that the Bigfoot had tried to snatch a young child, all hell broke loose in the region where the sighting of the mysterious animal of legend had occurred. After the women reported the event, men armed with rifles combed the woods and forests in an attempt to shoot the Bigfoot. Obviously, they weren't successful, or else everyone would have all the proof they need of the legendary Sasquatch. 10. The Squatch Standoff. One of the more action-packed encounters with Sasquatch is recorded by a man named Shannon Baker, who wrote about his father's friend in the 60s having an amazing encounter with Sasquatch. Apparently, the friend, whose anonymous name was John for the story, had his home trashed by the legendary creature and his son almost abducted. John was able to ward off the creature in a series of showdowns with his rifle collection, in which he shot at the 8-foot-tall monster in a harrowing battle in his backyard. At one point, John ran into his house to find his wife scared out of her wits by a hairy arm of the creature curling in through the window frame. His wife raised a shotgun and fired a .00 buckshot through the window, hitting the Squatch in the arm. The event took place in Washington state, near Copalis Beach. The incident was the basis for the movie, Something in the Woods. 9. The Kitts Swamp Freak Ape. In 1875, there weren't many zoos around, so the appearance of large ape-like beings might have been a less common occurrence. But that year, a man named Asa Grundy, however, described an animal that looked like a wonder monkey but was 5 feet tall or so in size in his backyard in Kitts Swamp, North Carolina. More alarmingly, the animal, he said, tried to abduct his 2 children. For weeks before this event, Grundy reported that the strange creature had been climbing around in his backyard garden, stealing poultry, corn, and other vegetables. When Grundy saw the creature with his 2 kids in one arm and making a beeline for the woods, he quickly intercepted and smashed the animal with his fist. The kids were retrieved without injury, he said, but the incident prompted a search by area residents for the mysterious creature. 8. The Red Giants of Lovelock. Legend rarely ever becomes history, but when legend is confirmed to be true, it often shakes up conventional beliefs and opinions such that some may still cling to their old, underlying beliefs. Such is the case with the old Bayou legend of an ancient fight with red-haired giants, which was said to have taken place in Lovelock, Nevada in the past. In the early 1900s, archaeologists confirmed evidence of this battle of legend during an excavation of the hilly caves in Lovelock. In addition to unearthing the remnants of arrows used in the battle, the archaeologists also found the charred, mummified bodies of 2 red-haired giants. One of them was over 8 feet tall. Legend has it that the neighboring tribes from the surrounding area joined forces to defeat the seemingly unearthly invaders. 7. Seraphine Long. Seraphine Long, similar to the story on Lake Harrison, was a young Native American girl who was only 17 years of age when she suddenly disappeared from her village in British Columbia. Scheduled to be married to a young brave in a Chehalis Indian village, she was last seen gathering cedar roots before her disappearance in the late 1800s. When she returned, Long gave birth to a child who died within a few hours of being born. She was too weak to talk when questioned. Sometime later, Long recounted how she had been carried off by a hairy giant that lived nearby. Unlike some accounts, Long said the encounter with the Sasquatch wasn't entirely negative, although she eventually requested she be returned to her village. Long said her captors spread gum over her eyes, so she couldn't see the route to the Sasquatch encampment. 6. The abducted grandmother. The Klamath River is a 263-mile body of water that winds through hills and mountains of Oregon and feeds south into Northern California. In the early part of the 20th century, some sources report, the scenic river area became the site of a frightening Sasquatch abduction. Unlike the previous stories, this abduction case didn't involve a younger woman or child but an elderly grandmother when she walked into a patch of pine trees near the river. A group of friends heard her frightening screams, but when they arrived at the spot, they said they saw a huge Sasquatch carrying off their friend under its arm. 4 weeks later, the woman stumbled into a homestead, reporting that she had been captured and raped by a huge ape-like creature. 5. The shaman and the sickly Sasquatch. It's interesting that a lot of Sasquatch abduction stories emerge out of the Native American storytelling traditions and legends. While many white person stories originated later on in the early 1920s, and we see a little after, although there are many modern sighting reports. Before that, we also have many Native American stories, perhaps some of which may go back centuries. One of these stories is a tale about a shamaness in Alaska who was kidnapped by a Sasquatch in order to take care of the sickly Sasquatch baby. Eventually, after the baby had recovered, the Sasquatch tribe allowed the shamaness to return to her village on the condition she not tell anyone where their encampment was. The Native Americans in Alaska refer to the Sasquatch as the Bushman. 3. Solomon Islands kidnapping. Marius Boyaron is an anthropologist and Sasquatch researcher who has collected numerous accounts over the years about Sasquatch sightings and footprints in the Solomon Islands. One of the more compelling stories Boyaron came across in his research was the story of Mango, a story passed down by the indigenous Guadalcanal. According to the natives, Mango was kidnapped over 50 years ago by the Sasquatch, after which she spent 25 years living with the giants, as the islanders refer to them. Mango was eventually discovered again after this period, at which point they also discovered she was pregnant with one of the Squatch's babies. Mango was apparently left mentally unstable by the experience, and sometimes she would cry hysterically after she was found again. According to them, many others on the islands have had similar kidnappings occur from time to time. 2. Saved by a whip. Russian hunter and adventurer Ivan Turgenev was swimming in a river located in a Russian forest in the 1800s when he felt a strong, hairy hand grip his shoulder. Turning, Turgenev saw a creature with a face like monkey. The animal was much larger, he reported later, than any monkey. However, and its hair, like previous stories we saw before, was red. According to the account, Turgenev quickly swam away, and once he got to shore, he started running as fast as he could, forgetting all his belongings and even his rifle, which he might have used to protect himself. Meanwhile, in almost Hollywood style, the creature pursued behind, while Turgenev stumbled along the shore as he tried to escape. As he ran, a boy appeared out of the nearby woods with a whip and started whipping the Squatch, which quickly ran the other way, squealing as it retreated. The boy said he had seen the creature before and used the whip on it. Some of the nearby villagers thought the monkey creature might have been an old woman who lived in the woods near there, but some Squatch researchers suspect otherwise. 1. The backpacking trip to hell. Jason Richardson is a 48-year-old trail hiker who has traversed the Appalachian Trail as well as numerous European mountains. Richardson's vast experience in hiking, however, did little to prepare him for an alleged encounter with Squatch, which he later hoped was just some sort of hallucination or dream. But as he recollected it later, he realized he couldn't dismiss the incident as unreal. This was because he was bruised and hit by a tribe of Squatch, he said, during one of his many wilderness sojourns near Lake Tahoe. According to Richardson, he was walking along the trail near Tahoe when he heard a sound in the nearby bushes. When he went to check it out, he was clubbed on the head. He awoke later to find himself in a cavern with several Squatches looming over him in the shadows. The creatures were using some sort of tools, he said, and they had bound him. When the Squatches, which also incidentally had red hair, he said, threw him outside the cave, he was able to break his bonds and get away. Richardson said he had been held captive by the Squatches for about 10 hours.